Hello and welcome to Lunchtime Politics. I am Kayode Okikiolu, sitting in for Millicent Walker. On the news this hour, Nigerian Labour and the federal government on a close-shave collision as both parties maintain hardline stance on new minimum wage negotiations. It's less than 24 hours to the expiration of Labour's ultimatum, and the big question is, can we avert a nationwide strike action? Leaders of the Southeast region seek President Buhari's support in addressing some of its economic and security challenges. Also on the program, Vice President Osinbajo restates Nigeria's allegiance to the Rome Statutes as he emphasizes the country's respect for the preservation of human rights and dignity. Welcome to the program. It's less than 24 hours to the planned nationwide strike by the workers' union, and there are indications that the aggrieved workers are digging in their heels on their demands, but that's until government listens to them. Well, leaders of the Nigeria Labour Congress, the NLC, and the Trade Union Congress, the TUC, say there is no going back on the non-implementation of, or the implementation rather, of the new minimum wage and the consequential adjustment until the federal government meets their demands. There is, however, a condition. The Labour leaders say they will only back down if there is a consensus at the end of a joint negotiation meeting with the federal government today.
I believe we've done beyond expectation. So what is needed of government is to reciprocate in doing what is needful in appreciating their workers. We're talking about compensation here. We're talking about salary. We're talking about legitimate compensation for work done. Tomorrow's meeting is truly the benchmark for action, but mobilization continue. You just know that labor mobilization continue. Tomorrow's meeting will still tell us the way forward, because anything can happen.
I told you that the books will be open. I've shown them the books. Government people side gave me the books. I showed it to them. On Wednesday, I promised them I will show it to them today. I've done so. The government personnel costs, government side showed personnel costs that are moved from 1.88 trillion to 3.38 trillion for 2020. How do you justify it? 1.5 trillion increase. Right. And this is with a budget of 160 billion for the consequential adjustment of minimum wage.
So that's where we stand right now. But for more perspective of the federal government and the organized labor's negotiation logjam, you might call it that, we have the former Secretary General, Organization of African Trade Union, and the former Acting General Secretary, Nigeria Labour Congress, Mr. Owela Kemfa, is joining us from our Abuja studio. Thank you so much for joining us on the program, and good afternoon to you.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon.
You know what? I'll just cut to the chase. April 2019, there was so much jubilation. October 2019, we have this back and forth. A lot of people did not project this coming up when the president signed the new minimum wage bill. So where did we get it wrong then? Didn't we project these things coming up at this moment?
No, I think it's just a part of the usual Nigerian drama, because there's no issue there. You know, there's no issue there. It's part of the usual Nigerian drama. We know every 5 years we must negotiate a new minimum wage. And we know that once you have a new minimum wage, other sectors, other grade levels must increase. So there is nothing there. It's normal. In other words, if the person on grade level 01 has 30,000 naira, it means that the person on 6, 7, 8 must also have an increase. So it's a normal thing. But I think it's failure of the technical, committee of the government side.
Right.
That's why we're having these problems. Because even when whatever amount you give me now, and I have a table, because you have a table that shows me grade levels 1 to 17, including incremental steps. I can work it out and find out how much, if we are paying 30,000, how much are you going to pay for this number of workers? It's a very simple, basic thing. Okay. But that's what they fail to do.
Mr. Akenfa,
let's just... they've done it and are pretending that they've not done it.
Okay, for the benefit of our viewers, let's just try to take a look at, what Labour is asking for and what the federal government is proposing, so we know where we stand. So there you see Labour's demand 29% upward adjustment for grade level 7 to 14 and 24% for grade level 15 to 17. They're asking that, backdates to April, and of course, grade level 1 to 6, they'll be getting 30,000 naira. So let's see what the federal government is saying. They're saying, well, this is what we have. 11% upward adjustment for grade levels 7 to 14 and 6.5% for grade levels 15 to 17. So this is where we stand right now, Mr. Lakenfa. So for you, what would be a middle ground? Because, I see the negotiations are going on, but what would be a middle ground for all the parties involved such that they can say, you know what, we did our best and we're fine?
No, in the first place, how do you, agree or decide on the percentage increase? Why is it 60 and not 70? Why is it 20 and not 35? Usually it's that you have a normal table. You have a subsisting salary now. And so once you increase the minimum wage, a percentage increase must also occur. And that percentage increase depends on what you call parity and the differences in the different grade levels and steps. So what you need to do is that when you have a minimum wage like 30,000, then you work the rest out. And then I think the whole thing about negotiation is that, look, this money is going to be too much for us. Can you, Labour, agree to reduce? And from what you've said, Labour has reduced by about 50%. That has consequences for the workers on those other grade levels. Don't forget that in Nigeria, those on grade levels 1 to 7 are usually very few. So you have the bulk of the workers between 7 and 14, and subsequently 15 to 17. And so when somebody says, oh, we are paying 30,000 naira to how many workers? If you have 1.3 million workers, like the government says, how many on grade levels 1 to 17, 1 to 6? And so I think the middle ground is still about negotiations. But all these things, the minister is talking about opening books and all those things. I'm sure everybody knows how the books in the Nigerian government is. We've seen the budget. And so it's not really, an issue you can threaten anybody.
All right.
It's an issue you'll have to negotiate.
Okay, you know what?
And reach a consensus.
Now, speaking of consensus, we understand that this is at the federal level. We still have state governments, and I'm not sure what the negotiations will be with Labour at those, different states. We understand from the NGF that about 20 states are willing to pay. That's if, what the spokesperson of the NGF said is anything to go by. But there's always that issue. So now that the federal government seems to be, having negotiations with Labour at that level, what do you see happening at the state level? Because there are lots of workers also at the state level too.
The first challenge about wages in Nigeria is that it's difficult for you to manipulate it or have, it's not like a contract that you get your own percentage. No. If you don't pay a worker his money, he shouts. And so it's not something that is very, popular for politicians or government officials who want to pay. That's the first thing. For state governments were part of negotiations. Negotiations were among three persons, groups. That is Labour, the private sector, and the federal government. The state governments and federal government. The state government and federal government constitute one leg. Employers in Labour constitute another leg. And then Labour constitutes the third leg. So these things have been worked out, actually. And so whatever discussions that are on with the federal government will also rub off on the states. And I know Labour has also met the state governments. And so all we need to do is ensure that we have less drama now, that we simply go on, sit down with Labour, look at the table, and say, okay, this is how much you can pay, this is how much you cannot pay, and then there's a consensus.
Right.
Anything short of that will not help the economy at all.
A lot of Nigerians are waiting to see what this consensus will be. And it takes me back to my previous question. If you would perhaps say, you know what, this will be a middle ground, what would you suggest? Because that's really important right now. What do you think should be a middle ground for them? I think a middle ground has been reached already by that 50% by Labour, because don't forget that they are representing millions of people. And so there's a level they cannot go below. And once they go below, they will have crisis in the unions. No. But beyond that also, if I may get clarification, Mr. Lakenfa, just a moment. If I could just clarify, Labour is saying that 29% upward adjustment for grade level 7 to 14 and 24% for 15 to 17. So that's what Labour is asking for. You say 50%.
Well, the parity before now was about 66%.
Right.
And so if labor has come down to like 29%, it's about 50% of what you have now between, amongst the workers. And so there's also a level you get to and it will be unmanageable.
Right.
For example, if you have a worker on level 7 who is earning 29,000 and you have a worker now on level 1 earning 30,000 naira, that difference, is reduced if labor is asking for 29%. It means that there is less incentive for the worker to move on a higher grade level salary. So you'll also have to be careful not to distort the table. If you distort the table, you distort the entire system. So it's even in the interest of government, both at federal and state level, to ensure that this labor, the payment table is not distorted. If we distort it, you'll have problems. And you've had it in some cases where then government comes up later and say, okay, for this level, we're adding this amount, or now directors are out of this, or you say the PAMSEC cannot earn 300,000, earns 3 million naira. It's as a result of the distortion you've also had in the table.
Okay, so there's this conversation around productivity, civil service productivity, and this is something that has come up a couple of times, saying, show me what you have done, then we can now perhaps talk about shooting up your salaries. So do you think this is a fair argument to bring up, saying, we need to ensure that you make that money back for us, as it were? Is that fair to bring that up at this moment?
No, it's not. It's a lazy man's argument, actually. Because you see, when you employ somebody, you have a job for him. Now, according to the labor laws, it is the duty of the employer to provide job, and it's the duty of the employee to now carry out that job. So if you employ somebody, a clerk, and you say this is your job, if he doesn't do his job, then you can query him or her. So the whole issue about productivity, it's not as if the federal, in the ministries they are selling groundnuts and pepper, and you say you must sell so much groundnut or so much pepper. No, it's not. So productivity is already inbuilt. It is now for the supervisors to ensure that these production levels are met. And so if you employ, for example, in the labor ministry, a labor officer, you give him a schedule, and then when he does whatever he does, you then decide whether he merits, a commendation or a query or even a sack. Okay. So these things are already built there. It's not like, okay, you are producing 20 cars now, so you produce 30 cars tomorrow. No, it's not.
Okay, so I know you've been involved.
Are inbuilt in.
Okay, pardon me. I know you've been involved with labor relations across the continent, and I'd like to ask, comparing what obtains with Nigerian workers' welfare, salary package, when you compare it to what you have in other African countries, how do we measure up? I'm just curious.
Well, I'll just give you an example of Zimbabwe, where the economy is supposed to be in serious trouble. I was in Zimbabwe a few years ago, and I discovered that when you go to a restaurant, you may spend maybe $5. In Nigeria, that's a restaurant, you spend at least $10 to $12. So the thing about minimum wage and salaries is also about value. What can you use it to buy? How many mouths can you feed with this amount? And you'll be shocked that in countries like Zimbabwe, with all their currency problems, the workers are on a better standing than in Nigeria. And that's a very serious matter that we need to really consider.
Oh, okay. Well, that's an interesting perspective you have given us right now. But on a final note, what are your hopes? We have less than 24 hours to October the 16th. What are you hoping for?
Well, my hope is that both sides will reach a compromise, because even when you go on strike, you still come back to the table and negotiate, and also for the government also. But there can be no grandstanding, because you're talking about people's income, what their families are looking forward to, and there is a lot of hunger in this country. Although I hear a minister said Nigerians are not hungry, but you'd be shocked to find out Nigerians are very, very hungry.
All right. Thank you so much, Mr. Owela Kempa. He is the former Secretary General of Organization of African Trade Union and former Acting General Secretary of the Nigeria Labour Congress. Thank you so much for sharing your thoughts with us on the program. Well, we'll take a breather now, and when we return, we'll be looking at human rights issues in the northeast region of the country. Join us again.